Hi everybody and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had a good week this week. I'm still in Florence in Italy and I stayed here this week. I did some fishing at the weekend. I'm sure I'll talk more about fishing in future episodes. It's one of my biggest hobbies. I love fishing. And I'm looking forward to my dad coming to visit me at the end of this week. So we're going to be renting a car in Italy and driving around some places here in Tuscany. So I'm excited for that. I'm looking forward to that. I just want to remind everybody to check out the blog as well. So remember, this podcast goes together with the blog. You can practice your listening skills and your reading skills, as well as expanding your vocabulary as well. So check out the blog. It's at engtu.com. So it's engtu.com. And also, if you become a member, you can get access to free materials which help you to practice using the vocabulary that we talk about in the podcast and in the blog. It's really easy to become a member. You just have to book a class with me on the website and you unlock the password. But yeah, let's get into the podcast for today. So in the previous episodes, we talked about becoming a digital nomad and then choosing a destination. And today I'm going to talk about my first destination, and it was Mallorca. So Mallorca is an island a Spanish island. And today we're going to talk about 3 things I loved about Mallorca. Okay, so as always, we're going to have a question for you to answer while you're listening. And today's question is simple. It's, what are the 3 things that I loved about Mallorca? And again, for extra points, try to listen for the reasons as well. So why did I enjoy these things? Okay, so here we go. So the UK has a lot going for it. It has green countryside, fish and chips, football, an English breakfast, and I think that's about everything. So let me know if you can think of any more. But one thing we definitely lack is sunshine. And that's why thousands of Brits flee the country every summer looking for some vitamin D. Mallorca is a really popular holiday destination, not only for British people, but also people from all around Europe. But maybe people outside of Europe might not know so much about this island. So Mallorca is an island in the Mediterranean Sea, and it's part of Spain. And I spent 3 months living in this Mediterranean paradise from October to December 2022. So let's take a look at the 3 things that I loved the most about Mallorca. Okay, number 1 is the beaches. And I'll admit, to anybody who's been to Mallorca before, or anybody who knows anything about the island, this is a very obvious choice. But I can't talk about Mallorca without talking about its beaches. It has some of the best beaches in Europe, and I'm going to tell you about some of my favorites today. So one of those beaches is Cala Mayor. Please forgive my pronunciation, any Spanish speakers. I don't speak Spanish, and I'm sure my pronunciation is really bad. So Cala Mayor, maybe not everybody will talk about this beach. I don't think it's a really famous one, but this beach has a special place in my heart. It was my local beach during my stay in Mallorca, and I spent a lot of time here. I used to go running there in the morning, relax there after work, have a swim in the evening. It's a wide and sandy beach, so it's suitable for a lot of activities. Sunbathing, reading your book, having a swim, play volleyball. You could do it all on Cala Mayor. And the sea was calm, so it was a good place for swimming. Next up is Calo del Morro and Cala Salmunia. So these 2 really stunning locations are on the south coast of the island, just towards the west, so a little bit southwest. And we rented a car and took a day trip here as they are quite remote. But you can visit them together in one day because they're very close to each other. You can walk from one beach to the other beach. And this is one of the most photogenic places on the island. The sea is really clear. It's a really nice place to go. The last beach I want to talk about is Sa Calobra. And I'm a big fan of, excuse me, And I'm a big fan of wild and hidden beaches that are difficult to get to. So Sagalobra was one of my favorites. You need a car to get here, or you could bike if you're very fit, because you have to cross a lot of mountains. It's a really breathtaking but a little bit scary drive because the road goes through mountains at one point, and you have to squeeze through a very, very narrow pass between two cliffs as well. And when the road ends, you're still not there. You still have to walk through a tunnel before you arrive at a really small beach. But because it's difficult to get to, there are not many people. So really great place. Okay, that's the beaches then. So the second thing I loved about Mallorca was the towns and villages. Okay, and with so many beaches to visit, it can be easy to overlook Mallorca's towns and villages. But if you want a real taste of the Mediterranean lifestyle and culture, you need to check out some of these towns. They're really cool. So again, I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 towns that I really enjoyed. And the first one is a must visit for me. It's called Deya. So I love the mountains and I love the sea, and this quaint little village gives you the best of both worlds. It's high up in the Tramontana, I think I'm saying that right, Tramontana Mountains, but it looks out across the Mediterranean Sea. And it's a typical Mallorcan village. It has palm trees, narrow streets, and really cool stone houses with green shutters on the windows. These green shutters, they cover the windows if it's really hot and sunny in the daytime. And this is a traditional feature of houses in Mallorca. I wandered around this village for an afternoon. There's some cool cafes to visit there. And I visited the village's beach as well. But unfortunately, the tide was too high that day, so I couldn't swim. But Deya is a really cool place. The next village I visited is just down the road from Deya, and it's called Solla, or maybe Soya, I think. Yeah, it's close to Deya, so the road from Deya leads along the sea and then into the mountains before dropping down into this town, Soya. And as you drive down the mountains, you can see the town below you. And it's a really, really cool sight when the sun is setting behind the mountains and you see this town below. It's really, really cool. Soya is a little bit bigger than Deya, and it has a lot of good restaurants. So it's a good place to stop for dinner. And there's a big square in the center of the town, which has a lot of restaurants around the outside. And a really cool feature is that an old tram passes through this square. So it's a good place to sit and have dinner and take some pictures as well. I had a really good paella here, which is a traditional Spanish dish, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. So Deya, Soya, and there are a lot of towns and villages to visit, but another really cool one is Valldemossa. And again, it's close to Deya, so you can see that I really love the mountains because my favorite towns and villages are all in Mallorca's mountainous region. So again, Valldemossa has some nice cafes and restaurants to visit, but the village's real claim to fame is that the famous composer Frédéric Chopin, I think that's again, I'm not good with names of places and people, I think that's the right pronunciation, but Frédéric Chopin spent the winter there in 1938. And finally, one more town, it's Calafiguera. So I talked a lot about villages in the mountains, but this one was a little bit different. So Calafiguera is a little fishing village, a little port on the southeast of the island, and it's a great place to walk around because you can see the boats in the harbour and you can have an ice cream while you're walking around there. Okay, so beaches, towns and villages. And the third thing I loved about Mallorca was the food. I'll say food and drinks, but it's mainly the food. So food is a big part of travel for me. So anytime I do a review of a country, get ready for me to talk about food. Let's get into Mallorcan food then. I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 different choices that I enjoyed. And the first one, maybe a surprise one, is toast. Okay, so I know what you're thinking, you know, what is special about toast? But in Mallorca, they know how to do toast. So they take a piece of toast and they rub it with a tomato and then pour olive oil over it and then add your choice of topping. So this could be, you know, things like ham, salami, could be cheese, eggs, avocado, many things. It's really, really good. And my local cafe, which was one of our favorites, we loved it there. They did really, really good toast. We went there maybe 2 or 3 times every week. Really good. The second one I have to talk about is paella. And this is the classic traditional Spanish dish. So it's a rice dish cooked in a big pot over a fire. It's made with some different spices and it has a mixture of ingredients inside, usually seafood, maybe chicken, maybe chorizo as well. But one of my Spanish students told me that a real traditional paella doesn't have chorizo inside. I think that's really a really good thing to put inside a paella, but you know, maybe it's not the traditional way. Final one, okay, again, it's not a traditional Spanish dish. I could talk more about other Spanish dishes like tapas, but I think I have to mention pizza in Mallorca. Okay, I don't know why, but Mallorca is full of really, really good pizza restaurants. Some of the best pizza I've ever had. And there's one particular restaurant called Sa Simbomba, and it was in a small village in the mountains, a village called Genova. And this restaurant was amazing, had really, really good pizza, one of the best I've ever had. So it's not Italy, but don't underestimate Mallorcans' ability to make good pizza. Okay, so I've talked about 3 things I loved about Mallorca today. It was the beaches, it was the towns and villages, and it was the food. These are just a few of the things I loved about Mallorca, but there are a lot of other things to talk about and plenty of things that I didn't have time to do or visit while I was there. But if you need some sun and you want to experience the Mediterranean lifestyle, then check out Mallorca. It's a really, really good place to visit. So I've talked about some of the good things, the things I enjoyed about Mallorca today, but not everything during my 3 months on the island went perfectly. So check out the next podcast or check out the next blog to hear about some of the things that maybe weren't so good about living in Mallorca. Okay, so well done for making it that far, everybody. That was quite a long one today. Some difficult phrases in there, some useful phrases, but hopefully you all got the answer to the question I set at the start. So what were the 3 things that I loved about Mallorca? Of course, it was the beaches, the towns and villages, and the food. And that was easy. I think you all should have got that one. But did you get any extra details? So did you catch which beaches I was talking about? It's difficult because the names are in Spanish, of course. But I talked about Cala Mayor, Calo del Moro and Cala Salmunia, and then Sa Calobra as well. Towns and villages, hopefully you caught that I really liked the mountain villages in Mallorca, and I talked about a few of them. And then food, so what were the 3 foods that I mentioned? Some surprises in here, I think. It was toast, paella, and pizza. So well done if you got the right answer and if you got those details as well. Let's go back through the recording and look at some of the interesting phrases in there then. Okay, so I began by talking about some good things about the UK, and I said the UK has a lot going for it. Green countryside, fish and chips, football, English breakfast. Okay, so the UK has a lot going for it. So when something or somewhere has a lot going for it, it means it has a lot of benefits, okay, a lot of positives. So we could say a person has a lot going for them. Maybe they have a good job, nice family, they're good looking, they have a lot of benefits, a lot of positives. So something has a lot going for it, it has a lot of benefits, a lot of good things. And I continued talking about the UK. I said, one thing the UK lacks is sunshine, and that's why thousands of Brits flee the country every summer looking for some vitamin D. So thousands of Brits flee the country looking for some vitamin D. So this word flee means to run away or escape from. So imagine an angry dog is chasing you, you will need to flee. Okay, you need to run away, flee. Okay, and then I started talking about the beaches, and the first beach I talked about was Cala Mayor, and I said not many people will talk about this beach. It's not one of the most famous beaches in Mallorca, but it has a special place in my heart. Okay, so this beach has a special place in my heart. It was my local beach during my stay, and I spent a lot of time here running, relaxing, swimming. So this beach has a special place in my heart. It means I have an emotional connection to this place, an emotional attachment to it. So for most people, this beach is not very special. But for me, because it was my local beach and I loved spending time there, it's a special place to me. So it has a special place in my heart. Nice phrase, that one. Okay. After that, I talked about the two beaches, Calo del Morro and Cala Salmunia. So I said I took a day trip here. These beaches are very close together. You can walk from one to the other. And I said this is one of the most photogenic spots on the island. It's one of the most photogenic spots on the island. So when something or someone is photogenic, it means that it looks really good in photos. It's very easy to take photos of it. So you know some people, you take a photograph of them and they always look really good in that picture, in that photo. They are a photogenic person. So this place is a very photogenic place. It looks amazing in photos. And if you check out the blog, I have a couple of pictures of these beaches and you can see they look really, really nice in the photos. Okay, the next beach I talked about was Sa Calobra, and I said I'm a fan of hidden wild beaches that are difficult to get to. You need a car to get to this beach because you have to cross the mountains. But I said the drive is breathtaking. So it's a breathtaking but slightly scary drive as the road goes between the mountains. So when something is breathtaking, it's usually like so beautiful that it takes your breath away. So we use this word for really beautiful or incredible sights. It's breathtaking. People could be breathtaking as well. You know, if you see a really, really attractive person, they could be breathtaking, but usually it's scenery or maybe a situation like in a movie, a scene in a movie could be breathtaking. It takes your breath away. It's amazing. Okay, so breathtaking. Okay, after the beaches, we started talking about the towns and villages, but I did say that with so many beaches to visit, it can be easy to overlook Mallorca's towns and villages. So some people overlook the towns and villages, and overlook means to not think about or not consider them. Maybe you think there are more important things or more attractive things to think about, so you overlook the towns and the villages. Okay, so when you overlook something, you don't consider it, you don't pay any attention to it. But I said it's not a good idea to overlook the towns and villages because there are some great spots to visit. And one of those spots is Deia. So my favorite village was Deia. And I said, I love the mountains and the sea, and this quaint village gives you the best of both worlds. So this quaint village. Here's quite a unique adjective, quaint, and we very, very often use this to talk about villages. Okay, so a quaint village. Quaint means kind of unique, a little bit different, but not in a crazy and extravagant way. It's quiet, so quietly different. Okay, very often we use it with villages. So in the UK, there are a lot of quaint villages, unique villages, but not crazy, quite quiet little villages. Okay, I talked about Deia and I mentioned that I went to the beach in Deia as well, but unfortunately the tide was too high for me to swim. The tide was too high for me to swim. Okay, the tide is the movement of the ocean in and out. I think it depends on the moon, right? So if the tide is high, it means the sea is very, very far up the beach. And if the tide is low, it means the sea is very, very far down the beach. Okay, so the tide was too high for me to swim. There was too much water, basically no beach for me to go down to. Okay, I continued talking about some other towns and villages. So I talked about Soya, and then I mentioned Valdemossa. I said there are some nice cafes and restaurants to visit here, but the village's claim to fame is that the composer Frédéric Chopin spent time there sometime in the past. So this is the village's claim to fame. Okay, your claim to fame is something that makes you famous, okay? So maybe you met a famous person sometime in the past, or you grew up with a famous person. This is your claim to fame. In British English, we often use this word in a sarcastic or ironic way. So, you know, I'm not really famous, or this place is not really famous, but one little famous thing happened to it, so it has a claim to fame. Okay, so Valdemossa's claim to fame is that a famous composer spent some time there in the past. Okay, yeah, that was the towns and villages. And then we went on to talk about the food and the drinks, and I think a lot of that was quite simple. We should have understood most stuff in there, but I did talk a little bit about pizza, and maybe that was a surprise. But I said, okay, Mallorca is not Italy, but don't underestimate Mallorcans' ability to make great pizza. So don't underestimate Mallorcans' ability to make great pizza. When you underestimate something, you think it is weaker or less than it really is. Okay, so we all expect pizza in Italy to be really, really good, but maybe we don't think people in Mallorca can make great pizza. They're not famous for that. But in fact, the pizza is really, really good there. So don't underestimate their ability to make good pizza. Okay, don't think their ability is lower than it really is. And that was it really. I don't think there were too many other difficult phrases in there. If you heard some things in there, or if you read some things in the blog that you're not sure about, feel free to give me a message and I'll be more than happy to help with those ones as well. So thank you very much for listening today, guys. I hope you found that one useful. Next time we'll be talking more about Mallorca, and we'll be looking at the highs and the lows. So the good parts and some of the bad parts about spending 3 months in Mallorca as well. And we'll be focusing a lot on phrasal verbs in that podcast. So be sure to check that one out. Thanks very much, and see you next time.